It has been one full year, 52 weeks, 365 days to this day, since the Hamas carried out the worst terror attack that Israel has ever experienced. It's an attack that has changed the world. It has pushed the world to a brink of a larger global conflict. And for 365 days now and counting, there are no signs whatsoever that the war is ending anytime soon. In fact, it has only escalated to an ever more dangerous point where Israel, which was once engaged in attacking the Hamas and the Hezbollah and the Houthis, basically proxies of Iran, the world now stands on the brink of a full-fledged war between Israel and Iran. The tenterhooks come 3 days after Iran launched nearly 200 missiles into Israel, an unprecedented action. Let's first show you and list out the 10 things that have changed in the last 365 days. Number one, let's talk about deaths. 41,870 Palestinians have lost their lives in the last 365 days and counting. 1,400 Israelis have lost their lives and counting. Now let's talk about Gaza. Before the last 1 year, it was under Hamas control. It was the political party that controlled Gaza. Now it is entirely in ruins. It is entirely rubble. More than 40,000 people have died there, and it is completely under Israeli control. Nearly 2 million people are homeless and seeking shelter in Gaza. Number three, very important issue of hostages. The hostages who were taken by the Hamas terrorists after they attacked Israel. Well, 251 people were taken hostage. Now, a little over 100 are believed to still be in Hamas captivity, because 150 plus have already been returned and an unspecified number have already been killed in Israeli airstrikes in Gaza. We don't know how many are still alive and yet to be returned. Number four, where is the Hamas now? Well, before they were led by Ismail Haniyeh, who, as you know, in July was assassinated by Israel, even though it doesn't take credit for it, in Iran's capital of Tehran. The circumstances around his assassination continue to be very mysterious. Virtually the entire Hamas leadership and cadre strength has been wiped out in airstrikes in Gaza over the last 12 months. For now, the Hamas is led by a man called Yahya Sinwar. But what is left of the Hamas is a very big question. Number five, what about Iran and Israel? Well, before the last 1 year, there were no direct attacks between Iran and Israel. Now, there have been 3 exchanges between the two countries. In April, Iran launched 300 drones and missiles at Israel. Israel hit back by attacking one of their air bases. And last week, Iran launched its biggest ever attack on Israel, launching nearly 200 ballistic missiles, including hypersonic missiles, into Israel. So airstrikes, assassinations, and missile attacks are now the definition of the Iran-Israel relationship. Number 6, the Hezbollah, the Shia group in Lebanon that is funded and supported by Iran. Well, before it was led by Hassan Nasrallah for many, many years. Now that leadership is in transition, because not only has Hassan Nasrallah famously been assassinated in an airstrike, but his successor is also said to have been killed in Israeli military action. Number 7, what about Israel and Lebanon, the country that Israel shares its northern border with? Well, before there were limited airstrikes against the Hezbollah, but now there are large-scale airstrikes taking place for the last 1 week and ground operations. There are covert operations also taking place. You remember the deadly pagers that exploded, killing many people, including Hezbollah operatives in Lebanon. So that entire front has also lit up in a very big way. Number 8, weapons. What about the weapons being used in this conflict? Before, there were drones and rockets and conventional missiles of all kinds that were used by either side in their attacks against each other, including artillery. For the first time, however, in Iran's attack last week on Israel, we've seen the use of hypersonic missiles like the Fatah 2, and that has resulted in a huge departure from the way wars have been fought so far. October 7th, 2023, the day Israel was caught completely off guard. Hamas rained fury on Israel on this day exactly 1 year ago, viewer, when it launched 5,000 rockets on Israel in a mere 20 minutes, and its aftershocks still ripple 1 year later. Take a look as we look back at that day.
Israel marks 1 year of the devastating October 7 Hamas attacks. And its aftershocks 1 year later. It was on October 7 last year when Israel woke up to a barrage of rockets launched by Hamas in the largest ever terrorist attack on Israeli soil, which killed over 1,200 Israelis, mainly civilians, and hundreds were taken hostage. Now, a year on, Israel and Hamas are still locked in a devastating war. A vastly depleted Hamas fired rockets at Israel. Israel is hitting hard, striking a mosque allegedly used as a terror hideout in Gaza, killing at least 18 suspected terrorists. Families of the hostages abducted by Hamas at the Nova Music Festival last year gathered at the site near Kibbutz Re'im in southern Israel to honor their loved ones.
The families of those who were murdered by Hamas gathered at the site for a ceremony during which they recited Hebrew prayers and held a minute of silence. On this day of the anniversary of Hamas's October 7 massacre, ceremonies will be held all over Israel South.
No one in Israel can forget the atrocities of October 7. The way that Hamas death squads burned people alive, mutilated bodies, committed barbaric acts of gang rape, and abducted innocent people into the Gaza Strip. Unfortunately, the world is forgetting. We're seeing protests around the world of people celebrating the atrocities, and that's what hurts so much. After October 7th, we thought the whole world was with us. Everyone understood that Hamas is an evil regime, and Israel has every right to bring Hamas down and to bring the hostages home.
A year on, the war is only escalating, threatening to destabilize the whole region. With Gaurav Sawant and Ameli Botbol in Israel, Bureau Report, India Today.
I want to go across to India Today. It's Gaurav Sawant joining us live from the northern Israeli city of Haifa. He joins us from there. Gaurav, 365 days. You and I were there in Israel last year, this month. We saw the aftermath of what was taking place. One would have imagined that, in 1 year, things would have quietened down a little bit. But I think the last few days, or at least the last 10 days, have proven that this could actually be the biggest escalatory period of this crisis. What have you been noticing, and what do we expect to see? Today is that first year anniversary, Gaurav.
Shiv, on a day that Israel should have been mourning and commemorating that massive terror attack where it lost a large number of its people, 1,200 killed, 250 abducted, 100 plus still in the custody of Hamas. Israel continues this battle, and those ceremonies, the remembrance ceremonies, most of them, if not called off, they've actually been scaled down across the country because there's an apprehension. One, Hamas continues to strike, use rockets from Khan Yunis to target southern Israel. Two, Hezbollah continues to target in a very big way, not just pockets of northern Israel, but even the third largest city of Israel, Haifa, where through the night, we were in an air raid shelter. We were in a bunker because it wasn't safe to come out, and at least 3 to 5 rockets have fallen into residential areas. So the situation remains extremely tense. And Shiv, the most disheartening part is the worst may be yet to come. That direct confrontation with Iran. We only saw the trailer when Iran rained 181 missiles on Israel. Fortunately, none of them resulted in any fatalities. But God forbid, the next round could be terrible, terrible. That is what Israel is gearing up for. At the same time, there is this very quiet, firm determination Israel will strike and strike hard, a war that Israel is fighting on 7 fronts. Israel says, and whether it's their Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu or General Herzi Halevi, the Chief of Army Staff, or even the common persons on the ground, they say they don't have an alternative. This is a fight for survival. They have to cut off the tentacles of that octopus of terror, as Israel puts it, Iran, and take down that Hydra-headed monster itself.
And they are nowhere close to completing those objectives if the operations that Gaurav and his team have been reporting on a daily basis are any indication. Gaurav, continue to stay with me. I'm going to come back to you on the 365th day of the Israel-Hamas war. Well, it's no longer just Israel-Hamas, is it? The situation remains far worse than it was when it began. Early this morning, Israel faced rocket attacks from the Hezbollah in Lebanon, targeting the northern region near Haifa, where Gaurav was reporting from just now. Israel quickly retaliated with strikes, including an attack on a mosque in Beirut. India Today reports from all of these active war zones. Take a look at this ground report. As the clock struck 6:30 a.m. on Monday, roughly the time when Hamas launched the deadliest ever terror attack on Israel, citizens gathered at the music festival site where revelers, nearly 400, were killed in cold blood on October the 7th last year. In Jerusalem, families of the 100 people who are still held hostage by Hamas collected outside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's residence to observe silence, marking the first anniversary of the carnage that left over 1,200 dead and triggered a war that's still raging. Early in the morning, Hezbollah launched scores of rockets at targets in northern Israel. At least 10 people were injured in the northern Israeli city of Haifa. The Hezbollah confirmed the attack, claiming they had bombed a gathering of Israeli soldiers.
That's the school, the damaged door, debris all around. Fortunately, there were no children present in school at midnight or close to midnight when the blast took place. Rocket appears to have fallen here. Debris and shrapnel have damaged buildings here.
Meanwhile, IDF warplanes pounded locations in southern Lebanon, including the Bekaa Valley. India Today reporters in Beirut's suburbs, which bore the brunt of attacks last week, saw a trail of destruction.
When the Israel Air Force carried out strikes in the southern Beirut, many rendered homeless. Their houses were destroyed, and many out of fear left their houses and now taking refuge on the road. And worst victim are the women and the children, as now they have no idea where to go. There are no homes, there is no life, there is no future, and it's all under concern and dilemma when the situation will calm down.
Israel claimed the mosque it bombed on Sunday in southern Lebanon was a Hezbollah terror base.
You can see how much damage has got created in the building. You can see here. People here say when in 2006 there was a war between Israel and the Lebanon. Even then this area was not targeted, but this time Israel is not sparing even this safe area or the hill station of Lebanon.
Israeli defense forces have been continuing their bombing campaign in Gaza. Tel Aviv claims the actions in Gaza are to prevent the Hamas from regrouping. Hamas is crippled, Hezbollah leadership virtually wiped out. But a year since the war broke out, one of Israel's primary aims, that is freeing all hostages, is yet to be a reality. And Tel Aviv probably has set new objectives after the Iranian missile attack. Israel's counter-strike on Iran and what shape it will take has put the world on tenterhooks. With Gaurav Savant in Israel and Ashutosh Mishra and Ashraf Wani in Lebanon, Bureau Report, India Today. And amidst reports of a bigger Iran retaliation, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has summoned a small war cabinet, a small group of government ministers for consultation at very, very short notice. Netanyahu's emergency meeting today on the first year anniversary of the Hamas attack on Israel. I want to bring Gaurav back in on this. Gaurav, the biggest the biggest anticipation, the biggest suspense has been on what Israel's next move is going to be vis-a-vis Iran, because the actions pertaining to Gaza and the Hezbollah, those are continuing as expected. But Iran continues to be that big question. Is there anything that you're picking up as Netanyahu goes into a huddle with this emergency group of ministers?
Shiv, there are several developments that have taken place in the past 12 hours which are extremely interesting. One, General Eric Kurilla, the commander of CENTCOM, he's been here. He visited Tel Aviv. He's interacted with Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, the top general here in Israel. Apart from that, Lloyd Austin, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, has spoken to Yoav Gallant, his Israeli counterpart. So the two defense ministers are in touch. The two service chiefs are in touch. And in terms of what the Israeli media is writing about, they've been writing about how Israel is getting additional resources. It's getting its resources together. And it's not just the Iron Dome system that's needed to be activated and have enough stocks and supply, because it's not just dealing with a Hamas and a Hezbollah. Shiv, even today, Hamas was able to target Israel. Even today, just a couple of hours back, Hezbollah was able to target Israel. Now, imagine a situation when Iran is targeting Israel with its ballistic missiles, including with hypersonic missiles. You have the Hamas and the Hezbollah also targeting Israel. This is a scenario, this is the worst case scenario that Israel is wargaming about. So you'll have the Houthis, the Shia militia in Iraq and Syria, Iran, Hezbollah and Hamas all launching joint air attacks. Of course, you'll have US Navy ships in the region. You'll have US aircraft, Israeli Air Force aircraft in the Mediterranean. They'll be taking down a lot of threats way before they enter Israeli airspace. But the threat is real. So they're, in first securing all the flanks. Once they're comfortable with flanks being secure is when they'll mount that massive offensive against Iran, is the word on the street. But you never will know with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Today is the first anniversary. They'll pay homage to those who were killed in that Hamas terror attack, which incidentally they directly blame on Iran, and then perhaps chalk out their policy on how to deal with Iran.
Gaurav, thanks very much for joining me. Stay safe. We will connect with you through Prime Time here in India today as we keep a close eye on any developments. Today is that first anniversary. It's a symbolic day. There's a great deal of symbolism in the choice of dates chosen, for attacks between all of these different entities. So we are expecting that there could be an escalation even today. Now remember that over 41,000 Palestinians, most of them civilians, have been killed in the last 1 year in Israel's operations in Gaza. Nearly 2.5 million Palestinians have been displaced in Gaza, virtually the population of the entire Strip. The Gaza Strip is now almost entirely just rubble. Take a look.
The once bustling streets of the Gaza Strip have been transformed into an eerie landscape of dusty craters, twisted wires, and crumpled buildings. After a year of Israeli bombardment following Hamas's October 7th attacks, the densely populated enclave, with a pre-war population of 2.3 million, has been pulverized. Here, in the southern city of Khan Yunis, more than 19,000 buildings have been damaged, data from the UN satellite center UNOSAT shows. It is the second worst affected area. The first is northern Gaza. Jihad Shamli, who lost a child in March, has been displaced 4 times since Israel's offensive began.
In any city in Gaza, you find rubble in the streets. Every street we enter, we find rubble. Gaza is not a war. Gaza had an earthquake, worse than war. We've been through a grinder. Gaza has been through a grinder this year. The destruction we saw, we've never seen in all of history. The other thing, we get the rubble not to build houses, no, but for tombstones and graves, from one misery to another.
Hamas attacked Israeli communities on October 7th, killing around 1,200 people and taking around 250 hostages, according to Israeli tallies. Israel says Hamas hides fighters among the general population in Gaza. The militant group denies this. Israel says it will strike Hamas wherever they emerge, while trying to reduce harm to civilians. Palestinian health authorities say more than 41,700 people have been killed since the start of Israel's military campaign. UNOSAT shows 2/3 of Gaza's pre-war structures have been damaged as Israel tries to eliminate Hamas. That's a total of 163,778 structures. Each block in this visualization represents a destroyed or damaged building. If placed all together, it would look something like this. More than 3 times as many buildings as those in the New York City borough of Manhattan. And the UN estimates that more than 42 million tons of debris are piled up in the Strip. That's over 14 times the rubble accumulated in all the conflicts in Gaza since 2008, and enough to fill the Great Pyramid of Giza 11 times.
As you can imagine, the challenges are huge.
Alessandro Mrakic is from the United Nations Development Program, part of a group working with local authorities on a pilot project to clear debris.
So this will require proper planning, very detailed planning, considering all not only the volume, but all the risks. It's going to be a massive operation, but at the same time, it's important that we start now because debris removal is a life-saving activity at this point.
The UN estimates that it would take 14 years and at least $1.2 billion to safely dispose of the rubble, if the war stopped now. But the scale of destruction is only one of the challenges. Conflict debris differs from normal controlled construction and demolition waste as it contains unrecovered bodies, in this case as many as 10,000 according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, and unexploded bombs. And the dust produced can be contaminated with heavy metals from munitions and household or industrial chemicals. All pose huge health and safety risks.
I can give you 100% assurance that people are being exposed to massive amounts of pollutants, metal contamination in water, in air, in food.
Mojgan Savabieh-Sfahani is an environmental toxicologist who has worked extensively in Iraq.
Those kinds of exposures will end up causing all kinds of DNA damage in mothers' reproductive cells, in fathers' reproductive cells, and that would culminate in a horrific rise in birth defect in children in Gaza.
The contents of busted sewage pipes underneath the debris can contaminate water supplies and provide an environment for disease-transmitting insects or a home for snakes and scorpions. The rubble is also a good environment for sandflies, which can spread skin infections. The United Nations Environment Program, or UNEP, estimates that 2.3 million tons of the debris generated in this conflict could be contaminated with asbestos. It is mainly found in the older buildings and structures of Gaza's 8 crowded refugee camps, some of which have been hit. With prolonged exposure, the asbestos fibers are inhaled and over time can cause diseases, including lung, larynx, and ovarian cancers, and fibrosis of the lungs, according to the World Health Organization. Experts say asbestos-related diseases usually take 10 to 50 years to emerge. The path ahead is also littered with practical difficulties. UN experts say Gaza lacks the 1,300 acres of land needed to store all the rubble. And landfills are now in an Israeli military zone. Israel's military unit Kogat says they were in a restricted area, but access would be granted. Government officials report fuel and machinery shortages as Israeli restrictions slow clear-up efforts. Israel did not specifically comment on these allegations. The UNEP says it will need owners' permission to remove rubble, but the scale of the destruction has blurred property boundaries, and some property records have been lost in the war. Asked about the debris, Kogat said it aims to improve waste handling and will work with the United Nations to expand efforts. Several donors have expressed interest in rebuilding Gaza. But a UN official who asked to remain anonymous told Reuters that, quote, everyone is concerned whether to invest if there is no political solution in place.
And the airstrikes in Gaza continue at this time as well. Well, The big focus for Israel now, however, isn't Gaza. It is Iran. As Iran declares its intent to engage in war with Israel, tensions have escalated dramatically in the last 1 week. After launching missile strikes on Israel, 181 missiles, including hypersonic missiles last week, into Israel, Iran's supreme leader has urged all Muslims to unite against a shared adversary. Israel is reportedly planning retaliatory strikes which haven't come yet, with potential targets. Here's a look.
Iran virtually declaring war on Israel with a spate of missile strikes on 1st October. And now West Asia is bracing for the biggest escalation. A full-fledged war between two of the most powerful nations in the region. US Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump urged Israel to target Iranian nukes.
It's the biggest risk we have. Nuclear weapons, the power of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. You know, I rebuilt the entire military, jets, everything. I built it, including nuclear, and I hated to build the nuclear, but I got to know firsthand the power of that stuff, and I'll tell you what, we have to be totally prepared. We have to be absolutely prepared. But when they asked him that question, the answer should have been, hit the nuclear first and worry about the rest later.
With reports claiming that Israel is readying a full-scale offensive on Iran, timed with 1 year of deadly Hamas attack and hostage-taking, where nearly 1,200 Israelis had died.
IDF is preparing for the biggest strike, and probably with the oil reserves, the presidential palace of the Iran could be the target. 7th October 2023 was a black day for Israel when Hamas attacked inside Israel. On the first anniversary of this attack, Israel want to do something big.
Israel may be planning retaliatory strikes with potential targets including the Iranian president's house, Supreme Leader Khamenei's compound, apart from Iranian oil facilities and headquarters of Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Iran may have lost another top general of the elite Quds force. Brigadier General Ismail Qani is missing since Israel targeted new Hezbollah chief Hassim Saifuddin. Qani was in the targeted compound.
It depends on whether the United States is going to fall in Netanyahu's trap of being dragged into a war. If it is going to attack Iran's economic infrastructure, Iran will retaliate.
Iran, which is believed to be a nuclear-capable state, may hit back with all the forces as it commands if targeted by Israel.
We're fighting against Iran, which last week fired over 200 ballistic missiles directly at Israel, and which stands behind the seven-front war against Israel. As Israel fights the forces of barbarism led by Iran, all civilized countries should be standing firmly by Israel's side. Yet President Macron and some other Western leaders are now calling for an arms embargo against Israel.
Palestinians are defending their own soil and their own land, and their defense is legitimate. Helping them is legitimate as well. Therefore, all of these attacks and Al-Aqsa flood operation that October last year was carried out, that was a correct move, logical move based on international law, and Palestinians had the right to do so.
Supreme Leader Khamenei on Sunday urged all Muslims to unite against Israel and pledged to hit back at the aggressor. Bureau Report, India Today.
For nearly a week since Iran's missile strike on Israel, the biggest question has been not whether Israel will retaliate and attack Iran, but what will Israel's response be like? What will it attack in Iran? Well, we've talked about nuclear sites being possible targets, but other than nuclear sites, which seem from the face of it a little unlikely, what are the other possible targets that Israel can look at? Number one, the Tabriz missile base. Number 2, the Kermanshah missile base in the Bakhtaran area of Iran. Number 3, very important, the Imam Ali missile base. This is in Khurramabad. This is an underground missile silo complex which was apparently involved in the October 2nd missile barrage attack on Israel. The Arak missile silo depot is also said to have been part of the launch, the launch offensive on Israel on October the 2nd. The Shiraz missile production facility is commonly quoted as, as an active target for Israeli airstrikes if they should happen. The Chabahar port, very, very important one, where India is involved as well. For the Iranian Space Agency is also nearby, that's under construction over there. The Haji Abad missile base is another possible target for an Israeli attack. It houses solid propellant ballistic missiles assumed to be underground like all missile sites in Iran. The missile complex in Isfahan, which is actually a production and manufacturing facility for Israel's ballistic missiles, is located there. That could be something that Israel may want to target. The Imam Khomeini Space Center in a place called Semnan. It's a launch facility for Iran's space agency and space program. That could be a strategic asset that Israel might look at as a target. The Sharud Space Center is a launch facility for the IRGC, could also be a potential target. Tehran, which is the national capital of Iran, also has a list of targets within its confines. The Iranian Space Research Center, or ISRC, the Iranian Space Agency, or ISA, IRGC, Command and Control, or Tharallah, are all in Tehran. And remember, considering that the Hamas chief was killed inside Tehran in circumstances which continue to be mysterious, it seems like human targets inside Tehran are also not beyond the reach of the Israeli Defense Forces. So that gives you a full 360-degree roundup of the possible targets in Iran that Israel could potentially be looking at in terms of a retaliation. Now, on the eve of October the 7th, the Hamas attack anniversary, the Israeli military actually intensified its airstrikes on southern Beirut, the Lebanese capital, targeting the Hezbollah's intelligence and weapon facilities. Large explosions lit up the skyline as Israeli fighter jets hit areas on the outskirts of Beirut and southern Lebanon, where Israel claims Hezbollah fighters have been taking shelter in a mosque. It's a video that was one of the most shared last week. The conflict, escalating since last year, has seen the Hezbollah's activities lead to increased tensions and military responses even as we speak. Take a look. On the eve of the October 7th Hamas attack anniversary, the Israeli military launched airstrikes on Lebanon's capital, Beirut's southern suburbs, in the most intense bombardment so far, since sharply escalating its campaign against the Hezbollah group last month. Large fireballs lit the darkened skyline and booms reverberated across Beirut. The Israeli military said fighter jets struck targets in Beirut belonging to the Hezbollah's intelligence headquarters and weapons storage facilities. The IDF also struck in South Lebanon's Yaroun village, claiming that Hezbollah fighters had taken shelter in it. It said strikes also targeted Hezbollah in the Bekaa area. Damaged and burnt buildings were seen on Monday morning in the aftermath of Israeli strikes in Dahieh, Beirut's southern suburbs, with plumes of smoke rising from the rubble.
I'm currently in the Amatya Hills. This is the hill area of the Lebanon where mostly people come for the safety and for their security. After the bombings in the suburbs of South Beirut, many families who could afford have shifted to this hilly hill station, or we can say, of Lebanon. But here also the Israeli air defenses are following all those people who are on their target and even attacking in these hills. You can see how much damage has got created in the building.
Israel accuses the Hezbollah of deliberately embedding its command centers and weaponry beneath residential buildings in the heart of Beirut. Hezbollah, though, denies storing weapons with civilians.
This is Zaytuna port area. This is the Bay Area, and right behind me is the Mediterranean coast. And always caught in the crossfire are the innocent civilians, the citizens, and that's exactly the case what I see here in Lebanon as well. Ever since the Israel airstrikes started happening in southern part, hundreds of the Lebanese or the Syrians living in that southern suburb have taken shelter near the Bay Area. They are sleeping on the road. I see the huge number of women, the children who are living here in literally difficult situation and condition, and there's always a fear as the Israel offenses are continued, the Hezbollah also retaliating, and if the conflict escalates further, probably it will affect the entire Beirut.
The conflict in Lebanon, which started a year ago with cross-border strikes by the Hezbollah in solidarity with Hamas, has rapidly expanded in the past couple of weeks. With Ashraf Wani and Ashutosh Mishra across Lebanon, Bureau Report, India Today. And the escalation is taking place between Israel and the Hezbollah. The IDF has just put out a statement along with videos confirming that it is now carrying out an extensive wave of airstrikes against Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. That's the very latest coming in. I want to go across to our reporters on the ground. Ashraf Wani and Ashutosh Mishra are our reporters on the ground in Lebanon. Ashraf, quickly coming to you first. The last 48 hours has seen a very steep escalation in airstrikes in southern Lebanon and also in Beirut. What is the current situation, Ashraf? The IDF announcing an extensive wave of strikes now on the Hezbollah.
Absolutely, Shiv. Last 12 hours, we can say specifically, because it is the 7th of October. On one side, the IDF and Israel is observing is at the Black Day in their country, when on last year, on the same day, there were 1,150 people, including the soldiers, got killed, and more than 250 were made hostage by the Hamas and Hezbollah together. Now, it is being also observed by the Hamas as well as Hezbollah as their victory day. Hezbollah today early in the statement said that their fight will continue despite all these jolts which they have suffered during last many months, that they are going to continue their fight against Israel till and until the Jerusalem is not liberated. That operation was named as the Operation Al-Aqsa on 7th of October last year. And now that has been changed into Labbaik Ya Nasrullah. That means Nasrullah, we are with you, who was the topmost commander of the Hezbollah. He was eliminated weeks back. Now there is an intensification by the rockets and the, we can say, attacks on the Israel, not only northern parts of Israel, but in fact, Haifa was also on the target since yesterday evening of Hezbollah. They have today also fired more than 100 rockets in different parts of the northern Israel. And also Israel has intensified its aerial bombardment that we are witnessing since last many days, not only in the suburbs of Beirut, but that has been extended to the other parts of Lebanon too. And also today is very important day on the Israeli side, that they have confirmed that they have started their ground operation in Galilee Finger.
Okay, very important. Taking off on one of those points, Ashutosh, the Hezbollah continuing to be struck by Israeli airstrikes, but apparently some of their military positions are still untouched. They are still able to attack Israeli positions in the northern part of that country, including, positions very close to Haifa.
Well, and on that terms, the tactical operation which Israel is carrying out using the drones. In fact, the areas that I have been traveling since this morning, I could hear the drone sounds throughout the day. And that's possibly to gather the intelligence to specifically target those areas where could be, a monitoring room or the war room or the intelligence committee room or even the communication system. Because the kind of FADI-1, FADI-2, FADI-3 long-range missiles that the Hezbollah have, of course, it's supported by the Iran, that not not potentially targeting only Haifa, but even could target up to central areas like Tel Aviv and even others. So while the Israel is facing this multi-dimension attack, the Hezbollah remains a major threat for Israel, particularly during this ground invasion, because the ground troop, that will be totally hostile area. So one side you have a missile attack, other time then you have a all of a sudden this Hezbollah, the fighters and Hezbollah terrorists who have multiplied themselves right after the killing of Nasrullah. They even recruited hundreds of these another numbers of these Hezbollah groups in their companies, in their troops. So kindly, what we see at the moment, Shiv, is the major threat over even the civilians, because as the drones continue this gathering intelligence, most likely what we see a massive airstrike in the southern part. So that are the extremely remote areas, largely the villages, because remember, every day the Israeli forces are giving evacuation notice. But this what looks like another major strike would happen in parts of Beirut, particularly in the southern suburb, even tonight. Right. So one side airstrike continues, there's a fear looming over another airstrike possibly this night, and that's what the escalation continues. The escalation is taking further.
Okay, Ashutosh and Ashraf, please continue to stay safe. You're in one of the most dangerous places right now, because that's where the airstrikes are being concentrated. We will keep coming back to you. Brave combat reporting from the war front in southern Lebanon and in Beirut, and we will continue to report from those places. Now, India Today's reporters, as you just saw, are in all of the places where this conflict is unfolding, bringing you first-hand information on the war, because that is important to the way that we bring a difficult and complicated story to you, not through agencies, not through somebody else's eyes, through our reporters and India Today's cameras. Here's Gaurav Sawant from northern Israel, where attacks by the Hezbollah are landing, bringing you this exclusive ground report 1 year into this crisis.
One of the worst impacted areas in the heart of Haifa. This is where rockets struck late last night. Now, if you just look around, this is a residential area. Right in the center of this residential area, a rocket struck. But if you just look around, these houses, they've got pockmarked walls. The window panes are all shattered, and window panes in several of these localities are made of reinforced glass. But look at how the walls are completely pockmarked. Several automobiles caught fire, some are damaged, and now emergency workers are trying once again to restore this location. We are right now in the heart of Haifa, and this is a kindergarten. In a kindergarten, these are Israeli security forces personnel collecting the shrapnel of the Hezbollah rocket that fell very close to a residential area and very, very close to a kindergarten where little children would have been studying. So let me quickly just jog across, and show you. So parents are here, mothers are here just to see all is well. Fortunately, that blast took place at night, and because it was at night, there were no children at the kindergarten. But look at this kindergarten there. You have, okay, let me see if I can take you inside that kindergarten. It's a bit tough while security is on, but they're saying, okay, you can go in. This is the damage. This is the kind of damage that shrapnel had caused. Now, imagine if there was somebody inside here, if there were children here, these ball bearings or these pieces of metal, and I've sent you a report with pieces of those metal, the kind of damage that would have caused. In Haifa, late last night, we rushed to the bomb shelter multiple times. 11:30 at night was when the first alert happened. Then the Iron Dome got activated. Several rockets were intercepted, but some managed to fall, in the city and target some areas. And that has led to a considerable amount of panic in the area. Remember, all across northern Israel, more than 60,000 people have abandoned their homes. They've fled to safer areas. But, these are youngsters who are saying that, nothing is going to scare them. You're asking me if Israel is scared. Everyone you see has a thumbs up sign. You talk to everyone and they have a smile on their faces. They're saying we are not scared. We are going to continue to stay here and target,
There is a miracle nobody heard.
Look, this is the kind of damage that was carried out yesterday. There are people who are here. Look, these are the buildings. It's a high-rise in Haifa, a residential high-rise that was targeted in that rocket attack. Now, fortunately, that rocket fell short. It fell in this open patch. I have some youngsters with me who are joining me on this broadcast. They live in the neighborhood. What happened yesterday? What can you tell me?
So we heard like the alert, and then we came inside the room and we start to hear like a really huge sound of, like a boom, really huge one. And then we stayed in the room like 10 minutes, approximately 10 minutes more. And when we get out from the room, we see that a huge hole in our house, inside of our house. So thanks God, nothing happened to us, but unfortunately we had a lot of damages at our house. We came here, a lot of police officers, like ambulances, everyone came here. It was here, right here. So
can you just point out that area for our viewers? Wait for a moment. Let me just try and move. Yes. So is this a completely residential area? Where this happened?
Here, exactly here. Do you see here the black hole? It's here.
Yeah. There were multiple rockets that also fell in the Tiberias area, which is about 50 kilometers from where we are right now. But just look all around. That's a shopping mall. These are all high-rise residential buildings all around. And now you have both the army and the police who've been deployed here to ensure that the situation does not go out of hand. And of course, also to reassure residents of this area. Come join me. You were here when the blast happened yesterday?
No, I was a little bit not exactly in the area, but you can hear the voice very far. It was like very strong boom.
So the situation remains extremely, extremely grim even as we speak. Even when I'm standing here, I'm being told you must know. The moment you reach any place, know where the nearest bomb shelter is and just rush there should something happen.
And remember, October the 7th makes this the first-year anniversary, which means as the sun begins to set, there is still time left for a possible symbolic action. We'll be keeping our eyes very closely on Israel, Lebanon and Iran. War reportage always first here on India Today.